Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead.
Doesn't know what we haven't got to yet is because you'll see the income statements here. But if we bypass that for a second, the back end of the story, the short is that she went back and looked at the numbers, trusting her intuition. She canceled the meeting with the power authority against the CEO. So they think the meeting's happening. They're in DC. She gets that telex, which is in the 90s, informing her about the rate, as we know. She does her homework and she can see how the current level of production could possibly justify it. She can't see how.
How to justify it in her negotiation.
Correct.
She doesn't know.
To get a lower rate.
Right. How can she convince them, and what will be the
justification? Because it would significantly, the increase would be by 25%. From what she originally did.
3.8, well, 4.25 drop.
Yeah, it'll increase their revenue by 25%, and she can't justify it as the chief economist. So this contract, so she calls, remember Ted Bates in the beginning of the story, the disgruntled senior analyst that's not going there, he's getting belligerent with all the owners and things, right? And he's just had enough. And so she reaches out to Ted because he knows all the numbers. And the moral of this story is that Ted goes, so I guess I guess you didn't hear about, he's talking about the big contract with the DOD. It's almost finalized, and she about hits the floor because she knows nothing about it. So now we know why the telex was sent from the CEO to her, because they're negotiating a contract for, they need that 3.8 number, because not only profitability, but to secure the contract. Correct. And then, so that's why they couldn't make the negotiation for the session. So Ted just said, you know, this is off the record, right? One of those things, because he didn't want to be hung out to dry, right? And then she's now in that dilemma. She ran all the calculations, the new projections. The 25 increases in output for the defense contract was staggering. Again, without numbers, they're not providing us the numbers, right? But the profits generate would exceed all the company's earlier expectations. And her dilemma was the negotiation process seemed like a ploy to take advantage of the unsuspecting parties, and the parties being the bank, the real estate, the community, the unions, everybody that was involved. The partnership philosophy, like we talked about at the beginning, remembering the partnership of trust, which Treadstone, the CEO, said, hey, this is what we're building our philosophy on. I believe in this. Trust with our employees, trust with the community. But now all of a sudden she's in this dilemma. How can she rationalize this potential greed? Or was it a clever way to do something to make a gain for the company? Because, right, those contracts that were renegotiated were first 5 years making a profit, renegotiate contracts, and it's literally starting to take a dive. The last part of this story, and then we can discuss other things, was that she decided to pick up the phone to Jim Doran, the VP of Operations. Remember, he was absent through all this. He just disappeared. He kept saying, it's not a good time. I'm getting ready to catch a plane every time he called. He's awfully busy to talk to her. And he said, look, I don't need to tell you about, if this is about the rate thing, we need the rate, period. Right. Hangs up the phone. She says, I have to go up the food chain. Gets to the CEO, to Mr. Treadstone. And he said, Susan, how can I help you? Well, she wasn't looking forward to talking to him. She said, how he just wanted to know how to go with the power authority. Did we get the deal? And she goes, yeah, well, actually, sir, I canceled the meeting. And he about flips out. You can imagine what that conversation would be like. And she didn't feel comfortable, is what she told him, with the new rate. Thought that they were pushing it a little bit at 4.25, but she said 3.8 wasn't fair at all. And John's basic explanation was the following. We need the lower rate to keep the plant operating and have a reasonable return. The economist, as an economist, you can understand this, was his line to her. And she said, Susan said, depends how you define reasonable. And she admitted to him that she now knows when the defense contract kicks in, our profits go through the roof. And he said, so what's wrong with making a profit?
And what deal is this?
This would be the Phil
Arthur Anderson.
The Empire Global Corporation case that I had submitted. It's more of the end of the story here is this, where
it's more of a review of ethics.
Moral and ethical dilemma, because John will tell them, Treadstone, that they need that lower cost for the DOD. And she basically confronts him about lying or riding that fine line to make a profit. And he basically, if Felport, the town of Oklahoma, Felport, Oklahoma, if they don't acquiesce to everything that they want, he's going to pull out the company, shut the plant, go abroad or find a new partner. Basically, was his sticking line, meaning how he was pushing on them. And at that point, the CEO says, basically, you're entitled to your opinion. You can if you can just keep doing your job, can't you? So her dilemma is at the end, and something came back to what her father said to her. So she goes through this. She knows what this means. John says, just reminds her, negotiations are what they are, the negotiations, and I believe you get the deal, and that's it. And at the end of it, he just says, I'm counting on you. She understands what I mean. She's in that dilemma of her career. And the last thing she recalls, her father saying to her as a business maximum is the following: slaughtered animals are meant to be eaten. Susan determined she would not be devoured. So that's the moral of the story is that they read that line of, are we lying, not lying? We need to get the deal done. This is what we need. If we don't get the rate reduction cost, we don't get the DOD contract, period. They went into a town. They had 3 different towns they were looking at. They went into a town that was dying, stagnant, all that.
Got them to extract or to provide them with all kinds of incentives.
Real estate incentive, bank incentive.
Which the cities did. Mm-hmm. Lowered utility rates for them.
Union incentives came back with a no strike clause twice. Go figure that. Good luck with that.
They're extracting all these incentives from the city, and pretty much.
What city was it?
Felport, Oklahoma. They were either going to go to Arizona or Missouri, but they wound up choosing Oklahoma because of how stagnant the town became. The CEO said, no, this is our place because they'll give us basically, it's like an Amazon coming to a dead town and they revive it.
Yeah, they got a lot of leverage.
Tax breaks that they can get.
They end up getting this MBA economist student who's really not suited, or, it's not her real job to be a negotiator. But the CEO.
No, her key assets were because she can see, she can hear, she remembers things, and that's why he'd hired her, because she sees, remembers everything, and she was just a bright girl, right? Didn't know she was going to be put in this position.
Right. CEO and the VP were the ones who initiated the negotiations, but then they pulled out to go focus on getting the DOD contract and left her with the task of finalizing all of the closing on the negotiations for getting all of these incentives from the city.
She had moral issues with.
And she had a lot of moral issues, or she had a lot of conflicts about, pretty much beating down the city to get this to work. They didn't provide enough detail about the numbers,
There's
and the time
basic
frames
numbers that we can give
to be able to really.
There's nothing showing the expansion. They don't give the dates that
any of this took place.
They give a lot of information for statistics.
But is this an Anderson deal?
This is an Arthur Anderson.
So they came in to advise him.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So Arthur Anderson, but this was in 1991. Yeah.
No, the heyday was what, 99, 2000, 2001?
No, in the early 90s is when they started Value Added.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean, they did this as a business ethics, more of an ethics, moral dilemma for people.
And then they went out of business because of business ethics and moral dilemma.
Correct.
Yeah. Isn't it?
Any questions? And remember, I say as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical, and morals and ethics swing the wind.
Right.
You can't do this unless what we do, unless there is a strong rule of law, and that limits it to about 6 or 10 countries in the world.
The negotiations were legal.
Kilowatts on these.
So everything was legal.
Well, yeah, no, everything was legal. It's just those guys, they've been around a long time. She was fresh out of school. Being a CEO and being the VP of operations, between 20 and 40 years experience, they just knew how to
take advantage of the situation.
Navigate what they wanted.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, she had to either eat or be eaten,
Do her job or lose it.
Probably, it's more of an everyday occurrence than any of us realize, in the world of business. It's just what it is.
Yeah. So, yeah, this one was pretty straightforward.
No, we'll put some of the numbers together, just some basic numbers. We'll just try to extrapolate them out. There's a few that we can at least show, but this is more of.
Well, it's hard for me to map it to the time frame for when all of this took place. So, because we don't have a particular year.
Correct.
So, I mean, they've got some of their financial statements here, but they spread over. Some of them are from 80 to 86, some of them from 82 to 88. It's not real consistent here. And like I said, there's no reference in the data about time frame.
The next one there will be.
Okay.
That'll change.
I mean, it's cool. We can still discuss the general points about coming into a town, using your leverage to try to, get the best deal for your business, your company. Mm-hmm. The fact that they offloaded all the responsibility of negotiation to the lowest tiered member of their team while they were out of town, at the last minute, while providing her limited information, put all the pressure on her to come through with the deal. Mm-hmm. And she still did it, but, is it ethical?
At the end of the day, eat or be eaten.
Yep. But no other questions beyond that.
Oklahoma's fucked anyway. I mean, it shouldn't have been accepted in the union, but anyway.
Question on a different note?
Sure.
Please. Yourself, obviously 40, 50 years of experience. How are you?
53.
53, thank you. Correct it.
Next month, 54.
Okay. How did you develop, I should say, over time, better risk assessment with people?
Scar tissue.
Okay.
That's the only way.
Okay.
And a little luck.
Okay.
But mostly scar tissue. A lot of people think that a lot of things I've done are based on luck, but that's not true. I mean, either my scar tissue or my board's scar tissue.
Sure.
When Bob died, 88 dry holes in the North Sea, and the 89th is the North Sea, and his nickname was Dry Hole Dyke.
Right.
And which I called him until he died, that irreverently. Hugh Carey, former member of New York, scar tissue. Mm-hmm. CFOs of both Gulf and Shell, scar tissue. Okay. He told me about contracts. Gulf signed a contract, gas contract back in 1920s or 30s or something like that. And they were selling gas at the prevailing price, no higher than 18 cents a thousand cubic foot. 18 cents a thousand cubic foot. Okay. And they honored the contract for 25, 30, 35 years, and they lost between 8, 9 million and 180 or 90 million a year on that contract. But they
honored it.
Kept it.
Yeah.
Okay? And at that time, Gulf Oil was controlled by one family.
The Rockefellers?
No.
They were split from that Standard Oil.
They took that away from Rockefeller back in the early 1900s is when they split up.
1911.
Okay.
Did he still have a major ownership share?
But it wasn't controlled. But I'm trying to think of
Who was running Gulf?
But the two things I remember from the CFO, his name was John Ernest, and he said that never have a yacht. The CEO of Gulf had a yacht built that was 110 or 112 feet long. That was 6 feet longer than the largest shareholder's yacht.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and he lost his job. And some people say they planted shit, and that this guy was a Bible thumping fucker, and they found him with pictures of girls. Doesn't mean you can't do that. But all of a sudden, he was gone. The second thing is there is a time and a place, even if it's not force majeure or war or whatever, that some contracts have to be broken. Right. And this is the example he gave me. 18
of one that
cents.
needed to be broken.
Okay, yeah. And even though that CEO that was thrown out for being caught with girls is the guy that broke it, and he was a hero, saving hundreds of millions. The fact that he built a yacht 6 feet longer than the major shareholders of Gulf at that time.
They didn't appreciate it.
Was the Mellon family.
Mellon, that's right. Okay, Mellon.
Ah.
Okay. Well, then John Ernest used to be the personal accountant to the Mellon wife when it was at Ernst & Young.
Okay.
Not Pricewaterhouse. And so she liked him. So he went up the chain at Gulf because Mrs. Mellon liked him. Okay. Now, whether he was a good looking guy, went to Penn, good looking guy, Marine War, blah, blah. And so all of a sudden he got to be controller. And, and when all this mission action happened, and apparently he's doing the books. He used to go there on the weekend to do the old lady's books. And when his wife used to, you tell the story, his wife would be sitting here, John would be sitting here, and I'd be there, and Sally would be there. And his wife is kicking me under the table. As if to say, I'm not telling you it all. What 27-year-old good looking guy goes over to keep the books of a 66-year-old? Anyway, so, but he broke the contract, and he was a big hero. And the funny thing about it is the signature page of that contract was lost decades before, because they didn't want to hang it on anybody.
Sure.
Now, some of the guys at golf knew, but they were all dying off because they were, by then long in the tooth. But the Mellon family, the yacht, and he used to, John Ernest and his first wife, who passed away, used to go on the Mellon. They'd go to fly in the Mellon jet to Lake Como and all this shit. So he had a very rich lifestyle, because he liked my Mrs. Mellon. Then the Mellons lost control when they merged with Chevron. Golf merged with Chevron. And Chevron, about in 80-something, and it was John Ernest's idea to marriage with Chevron.